Mick Cronin has me reconsidering who I think the starting two guard's going to be.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, review, download. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoff season, Olympic season, tournament season winds down. Go to FanDuel.com and check out the boost and bonuses they have for all customers daily. What we're talking about today is almost me reconsidering my initial thought on what UCLA's starting five could be. I had put out a lineup that I'm very confident in the majority of the spots, but after Mick Cronin's gone on, made as many media performances, appearances, whatever, now that UCLA is officially in the Big Ten, as weird as that is, he has me considering the fact that I think Skyy Clark is going to start over Sebastian Mack. At least he might get that first crack. Now, there's still practices and everything, and we're in August. But the more I look at it, the more numbers I chew. And Skyy Clark's journey has certainly not been a straight arrow path to UCLA. But they're going to be two very competitive guards, bringing different skill sets and big-time potential. Now, Mick Cronin already knows what Mack has to deal with. But the more I look at Clark, the more impressed I am. And with him being a 21-year-old junior that's played at the highest level in now 3 different power conference universities, I think he's going to start. Let's look at the numbers between Skyy Clark and Sebastian Mack, right? You've got Skyy Clark, who committed one place, then eventually started his career at Illinois. You know what he did at Illinois? He didn't play as much, eventually left for personal reasons. But the big thing was, what almost went under the radar to me for so long, was that for that UCLA team that won the Pac-12, that first loss the Bruins took that year, that's Mick Cronin berating his team in the locker room for their poor defensive performance in Vegas, was, yes, Terrence Shannon Jr. just balled out, and now we know he's a superstar, but Skyy Clark also scored 10 points in that game against UCLA. Like, that was a team that had Jalen Clark, Hawkins Jr., a longtime veteran point guard in Tiger Campbell. You had a team that was amongst the top in the country when it came to defensive metrics. You had a Dembona in the paint, for crying out loud. Amari Bailey, who was still finding his footing, and he still put in 10 points. Now, you can look at the ridiculous three-point shooting numbers from Terrence Shannon Jr. Yes, that was important in that game. But Skyy Clark showcased as a freshman in his limited appearances what he can do. Then he transferred out and went to Louisville, and that was a rough season for anybody involved in the Louisville program. But he still found ways to make the numbers work. All right, let's take a look at his sophomore campaign. Averaged at the end of the day, 13 points per game, 13.2. Shot 35% from 3, 77% from the free throw line, and 41% from the field. That number stands to be a little bit better. Mick Cronin's been on the record saying he's not going to have to do that much at UCLA with the ball in his hands. That is going to be Dylan Andrews' bread and butter. Having the ball, distributing, getting to the hole. And even if Andrews has an improved three-point stroke, you've got Clark, you've got the incoming Harris, you've got many players who can shoot the three ball better than the likes of Dylan Andrews. And if you can look at improved rates from Skyy Clark's catch and shoot three-point rate, then you're going to have a team that can shoot the lights out. Now let's look at Sebastian Mack, who had his own issues, right? Because he's a true freshman, taking the bulk of the shots for UCLA for a large portion of the year. And I know many of you mentioned it, but he's had a toe injury. And the season really became, derailed after he smacked Brandon Carlson and got ejected with a flagrant 2. UCLA was truly on a hot streak. And then next thing you know, they faded down the stretch. And Mack wasn't really heard from after a flagrant 2 smack of Carlson. And then he was hurt and couldn't do much. For Mack, this is what his numbers were. Early in the season, was putting up numbers close to 16 points per game as a freshman, 15 points per game. And then that number, by the time the season ended, was 12 points per game in which it took a 16-point performance in the final game for UCLA just to keep them over 12 points per game. Now, that's Skyy Clark having an advantage in points per game. You've got 38% from the field if you look at the shooting numbers for Sebastian Mack. So Skyy Clark's got him beat there. 3-point numbers, way in favor of Skyy Clark. 28% Sebastian Mack shot it. And Mack, though, he took more shots than Clark, got to the free throw line more than Clark, and ended up shooting it at a 72% from the line. Now, if you look at overall rebounds, you've got Mack, who averaged about 3.6 rebounds per game. UCLA needed rebounding from everybody. Clark, about 3 rebounds per game. So somewhat similar numbers, but Mack grabs so much more overall. The big question is, what is Mick Cronin going to tolerate? In Mack's first year, he turned it over 52 times, had many wild drives to the cup, but would get fouled. And if he didn't get fouled, it would lead to many wild layup attempts, some of which he made, a lot of which also contributed to UCLA's terrible shooting numbers in the paint, one of the worst in the country. Clark, a little bit better finisher, much better pure shooter at this stage. And this is a guy who overcame an ACL tear, has bounced around schools-wise for personal reasons. He even posted on social media about the struggles with health and his family. But the thing is, for him, he hails from Los Angeles. Mick Cronin's mentioned his name multiple times, and the maturity, the age, I think has to play a factor in this starting role. And I thought Mack, maybe as the incumbent, could find a way to keep that starting role. But the more I look at it, this is a guy as a freshman that Clark put in 10 points against a really good UCLA team with some of the best defensive players in the country. You had the National Defensive Player of the Year in the game. You had a first rounder who played well on a playoff team. You had some top tier freshmen with Amari Bailey. You had so much involved with UCLA in this game that, yes, as much as they got cooked, you still found ways for him to score 10 points. Clark in that game, 28 minutes, 10 points, 5 boards, but 4 turnovers. That is the one thing that if Mack can keep down, if he can be an elite defender, because sometimes he's doing an Olay, and while he gets some steals, he would get blown past on the perimeter, which is where Kobe Johnson's going to help improve significantly the perimeter defense. The more and more accolades he gets to Jalen Clark in comparisons from Mick Cronin, then you have the cleanup stopper in William Kyle, your various options, but I believe Tyler Bilodeau at the 4. Dylan Andrews made a significant jump from freshman to sophomore year, and I believe will do the same from sophomore to junior year, which leaves you with an all-out carousel. And that's not to say Trent Perry might not be in the mix, a McDonald's All-American, although after a year filled with freshmen, I think Mick Cronin will be hesitant. After all the money literally spent to get these transfers and to bring in the freshmen too, I think he's going to go with an experienced kid who can score. And if he can show some growth in his turnovers, he can score at a more efficient rate than Sebastian Mack can. And not to say Mack can't start. He can certainly battle, and Clark might have to battle for the backup 1. Whoever loses the starting 2 battle is probably going to be the backup 1. And you can't forget, Dominic Harris comes in averaging close to 18 per game with one of the best 3-point shooting numbers in the country. Now, he's not in yet because he has to still finish up his classes at LMU. He's got to get acclimated, which gives one of these 2 guys a head start with summer workouts, with Mack being there for so long. And I think Harris will play a different role. And the better one of these guys can do it not turning over the ball, they'll see more time on the court by manning the 1 when you got to give Dylan Andrews some rest. So there is an opportunity to share time at the 1 and the 2. But the more I think about it, I think Clark, with his shooting ability, true shooting ability, is going to steal that spot over Mack. Now, I could be wrong. It's going to come down to turnovers and defense. As much as Cronin loves the new scoring weapons he's brought in, it's really going to come down to you can't turn over the basketball at UCLA. And that's what he yelled at Dylan Andrews for 2 years, Tiger Campbell for a few years. That's what he's been yelling at for his floor generals forever. If you're going to come in, even though with a reduced ball handling role, You come and turn it over. You play lazy defense. You're not going to see the floor unless you're down 20 and Mick Cronin needs you to hit 5 threes in a hurry. So I do think Clark is going to have to clean that up coming into UCLA in order to win the battle with a very deep backcourt. I think he has the capabilities, and that's where I'm leaning now after kind of diving in a little deeper. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section. But next, it's not a battle for QB1, but are there new opportunities for Ethan Garbers? And what did Eric Bieniemy have to say recently about his quarterback room? Next, a Locked On UCLA. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 120 million plus parts for your number one ride or die. You'll find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back. eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, cruising on to segment 2 of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Going back to the gridiron, fall camp, everything very early in this process going into the first game of the season against Hawaii, where the college football season starts so early this year with week 1 in August 31st, and the 2 byes this year, which is significant for a UCLA team that has so much travel to do this year. But not too many questions when it comes to who is going to get time at certain spots, right? With Josh Carlin moving over to center, you've got guys slowly moving into starting roles or who are going to take the first part of the first spot on the depth chart when it looks like when it comes to offensive line, skills positions, running backs, and now there might be more battle for a fullback position, depending on what Eric Bieniemy wants to do, more of a pro-style offense as opposed to up-tempo Chip Kelly style of offense, which means there's more on the plate of Ethan Garbers. More reads. If you're running more of an NFL-style system, a pro-style system, that means he's going to have to make more and given more to dissect at the line of scrimmage. So where does Ethan Garbers come in now as a longtime quarterback, using his COVID year, having transferred from Washington after 2020, now seeing significant game action in UCLA seasons from 21 to 23, where, remember, he came in the Oregon game, he came in 22 in the game against the HBCUs, and then also in 23, and can't forget the 22 bowl game, 23 led the heroic effort in the bowl game when mostly injured to lead UCLA to victory, while also putting up numbers like 11 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The Bruins were rather dominant when he started games as opposed to Dante Moore, and really figured it out as the season went on as just a veteran pocket presence who didn't get too flustered when the pressure got to him and would generally make the right reads. Now, it's going to be up to Garbers to improve accuracy numbers that, yes, saw him close to 67%. A not truly mobile quarterback. Yes, he can run and had 127 yards rushing in 23, but he's not a dual threat guy. I'm not sure that Bieniemy is really going to ask him to do that in this style of offense. And until the offensive line improves to protect him, it's going to be a lot of adjustments at the line of scrimmage. And seeing what Eric Bieniemy said to the media after fall camp, it looks like Garbers will be given a lot more to process. And he's seen a lot from top-tier Oregon teams coming in a bowl game in the last minute, coming in 23, yes, no, maybe so, going to start, gets banged up. It's going to be a lot up to him on the success of this offense. UCLA has the talented wideouts that can go out and make plays, from the likes of Loya, Sturdivant, guys who I'm just literally forgetting off the top of my head, whether they had limited roles the year before, will have increased roles, youngsters coming in, so many talented tailbacks that can go out wide and make plays like I expect Keegan Jones to do, and certainly TJ Harden, with so many extra backs UCLA's gotten in the portal that might slot into fullbacks or work in this two tailback system in certain play schemes and certain formations that Bieniemy is going to run depending on who they play, right? Are they playing a team that's more physical up front? Are they going to have to spread out teams? We'll find that out as the season wears on after the Indiana, the Hawaii games. So it's up to the moxie and the intelligence of Garbers, with Bieniemy saying he ran and had some installs during summer. He was leading the group. And what's interesting, right, is I'm not sure how long Bieniemy is going to be the coordinator at UCLA, right? As long as he's successful, he's going to bounce back for an NFL job or do something different. And I believe he's got a 2-year contract with UCLA currently. But for Garbers, the most successful thing is, one, to lead the establishment into the Big Ten, lead this team with knowing what he's going to do. And UCLA could surprise a lot of folks by having a veteran quarterback compared to the opponents they're going to have. From Hawaii, LSU losing their Heisman winner. From Nebraska, most likely starting a true freshman quarterback, although by the time it's week 8 or 7, whenever they play Nebraska, he'll have a little more seasoning, in Dylan Raiola. But having a veteran quarterback for Garbers taking 100% of the snaps this year, the unquestioned starter and leader of this team now in 24, as opposed to me last year saying, Dante Moore, start him, see what you got. Well, it didn't work. Even after you gave Garbers the starting nod and the team rallied around Garbers, and having that veteran presence, you can lead yourself into those tough environments like Penn State, like Nebraska, like LSU, with maybe not the biggest chip on your shoulder, but confidence knowing you're going to have somebody who's more likely than not going to make the right play, the right checkdowns. And if he's given more of the reign of the offense, more free reign to make plays and change some things, then we'll see how much of a jump UCLA can make offensively, when at times in previous years with Chip Kelly, it was all about what play Chip Kelly would run. And if they couldn't run the football, could they dial up the right play at the right time, the right underneath route to get 15 yards on a 3rd and 8 that led UCLA to a first down when they had a good offensive line in 21, pretty solid in 22, and a pretty poor offensive line in 23 with their play and how the numbers stack up. Can Garbers lead them that way? And if the enemy's staying for longer, the more he puts in the room, the more he helps the younger quarterbacks who just probably aren't going to take his job this year, he can lead it to the future. As much as they have Madden Iamaleava coming in 25, that gives a big head start to Justin Martin, who's been waiting forever for a crack at any playing time. You've got the 3 freshman quarterbacks in right now. And I think UCLA is going to be better off for it with the leadership of Garbers, who can not only lead UCLA to success now, and it's not going to necessarily mean competing for a Big Ten title in year 1 or a college football playoff, but helping the rest of the offense, the rest of the players grasp a much higher level offense, or just the next level. If you want to play at the next level, you got to grasp the schemes that Bieniemy's done as a Super Bowl championship coach. You bring that to the college game. You teach the younger quarterbacks. That'll give them a leg up when Madden comes to town, Iamaleava, next year, right? With his running mate at receiver. And then they can maybe spread the knowledge, or they can just have a much bigger competition. So it's just more than now with Garbers as the quarterback. Yes, wins and losses, how they look, how competitive they are, will serve UCLA going forward in recruiting as much as their NIL budget and how many scholarships they give out and fan attendance. But setting the stage moving forward is important for Garbers, where sometimes we forget in those lost seasons, right? 8-5, not successful. Well, they still went 8-5. Garbers went through hardships, and there's nothing that's going to faze him this year, even with a new coach, a new coordinator, a different culture, but a large number of players returning from his offense in 23 that support him and have worked with him and have reps with him over the last few years. In addition to growing the younger players in a scheme that should hopefully be in place for another year before we see where the coordinators have gone in year 1 and year 2 in this fickle coaching carouseling industry. But it's all up to Garbers to learn it. It's not up to him to go 10-2 or something ridiculous, but he can really drive the engine for what is going to be UCLA's strongest unit on the field, the offense this year. And that used to be the case with Chip Kelly, but in 23, it was a little reverse flip. With so much turnover defensively, you're going to have to help out your defense. UCLA is going to have to put up points. Last year, the defense bailed out the offense. And fortunately, this year, it's going to be the reverse. And while we're not asking them to put up 40 points per game because that's a ridiculous number, if you can put up a significant amount of points in some games and squeak out some nail biters, this season could turn into a bowling season that goes to 7 shocking wins and 8 with, an underrated offense that came into the year with the wonderful mind of Bieniemy, a veteran quarterback, and some talented players around them. But the inability to make that happen, then they're going to be 3-9. All right. Now moving on to the baseball diamonds, some interesting news reported by Ben Bolch of the LA Times about a UCLA coach, former high-profile closer for the Bruins in their national championship run. He's out. Why? What does that mean next? We'll talk about it on Locked On UCLA. It's fairly obvious by now. I love sports. You love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. With the playoff, Olympic, tournament season winding down, we're going to get fewer games, fewer opportunities, fewer events. But then the sports won't be sportsing like I want them to. However, FanDuel lets them keep going whenever I want. And all I have to do is dream up bets, open the app whenever I'm in the mood. So this summer, as it's winding down, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Cruising on into the final segment of Locked On UCLA, Zach with you guys talking about UCLA Baseball, right? They've had their odds and ends. They have not been successful in recent years since the 2019 season prior to COVID when they were a number 1 overall seed, fell short to eventual Big Ten rival, national runner-up Michigan. But now what we're talking about is just, kind of devastating to the UCLA program. When you have David Berg, a former player who was an elite closer for the team in 13, one of the reasons they helped win the championship, their only national championship in program history, had worked his way up from the grad assistant role all the way to an assistant coach. And he recently parted ways, according to a Ben Bolch article that was posted August 3rd, after there was an investigation, university investigation, that he had slapped a student athlete in October, which I believe is October of 23. The result of the investigation, when he was on paid leave, he got suspended for a month, docked $10,000 in salary, which according to the Times is the equivalent of 2 months' pay, suspended for 7 games in February, and was required to undergo training in violence preparation. Now, I believe there wasn't too many replies. Berg didn't reply to the Times. John Savage didn't reply to the Times, but there's a spokesperson for UCLA from the athletic department that was quoted in this LA Times article that said, "We can confirm that through a thorough campus-run investigation was conducted prior to the start of last season. Disciplinary action was taken, campus protocols were followed, and though the individual is no longer employed by UCLA, this remains a personnel matter, and we will not comment further." So what happened was he was placed on paid leave November 2nd after it was said there was a phone call from a parent that he slapped a kid in the face on the field, quote unquote. It happened apparently at a recruiting dinner that in Santa Monica was attended by players and coaches. And according to the story, David Berg was trying to change seats with a player at dinner and have him sit next to Savage. Berg wanted to get a recruit during a recruiting dinner, sat next to him. Player didn't want to do so. After dinner, Berg was there and heard the player complaining, shaking his head, and then gave what is quote unquote said in this article, a double tap on the cheek that was not violent in intent. It was inappropriate, but not physically aggressive. So whatever you take from that, not a big slap, but something that's really inappropriate from a coach to a player standpoint. Now, there was different accounts reading the article, but the thing is, in terms of what happened and what led up prior to the slap, but the thing is, the player with witnesses said he was at minimum surprised, while some described him as emotionally distraught and upset nearly to the point of tears, the quotes from the player in this article according to the investigation. So after it's all said and done, he's no longer there, and he left, but he was not fired from what I'm gathering. It's just, this happened almost 6 months, close to a year ago. And you just hope everything's okay after it's all said and done with where Berg was trying to grow in his coaching career with the UCLA Baseball athletic program. It just seems like that's just not the thing you want to have happen. You just can't put hands on a player. You just can't do that. I just can't wrap my head around that. And that it happens at a recruiting dinner, just ridiculous. But here's the thing that what a witness said in this article. It's not the first time he's gotten physical in a joking manner. I feel like it crosses the line. I don't think anyone likes to be hit. I think it's kind of offensive, but you can't do anything about it. So that was what was said in the article verbatim from a witness in this opportunity. And now this was a poor season by UCLA, but this is a story a little greater than that. Mind you, he wasn't fired. He didn't, according to what is being said, didn't come across and smack the athlete, but it's just unfortunate, a little spin years later, almost a decade later, after you reach the pinnacle, it just kind of ends like this with the UCLA program that's just floundering as it is in baseball. Tied for last place in conference in the Pac-12 and 14 games under 500. And while the story's greater than this, there's added details to the picture of what's going on. And you hope it doesn't hurt the program going forward. You hope players good. You hope Berg learns his lesson if he doesn't even get another opportunity going forward. And I just wonder what that's going to be judged as. And of course, in this day and age, whatever the saying is, different interpretations, but it just happens nowadays. It doesn't just happen. I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but it's unacceptable. But he wasn't fired. He was suspended. And now UCLA's got to make things happen going forward. This is a program that's going in the wrong direction. All right. I like to end it on a positive note, but, they just have to figure out how to move forward. They've already replaced him with Griffin Barnes in terms of his spot on the staff as an assistant coach. And now you just got to move forward. People make mistakes, but it's a little different in different scenarios. All right. So that's the big news coming out of UCLA baseball. Wasn't fired, wasn't booted. It says he left UCLA baseball. So after it's all said and done, a chaotic year, maybe a clubhouse that was not connected, especially when you're trying to go from coaching staff to the players. And you can see, all right, injuries, everything, and now it's starting to add up. And things have to change for the better for UCLA program that for a long time under John Savage had many highs and successes and now has to pivot into a different direction in order to get its image back and get success back on its name. All right. So that's how we're going to end it, Locked On UCLA. And, we're going to still 8-clap. We're trying to get things going, all right? Hands up, Bruins fans. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. We got more basketball, football content coming up. And this is Zach signing off saying, go Bruins.